Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. Today, I have Amanda Erin Kelly with me, and we are going to be speaking about trusting the soul's call to travel, retrieving soul codes, and activating multidimensional aspects of self. Amanda is an illuminator, self-mastery catalyst, intuitive soul guide, and priestess of the rose in service to the path of love. In 2016, with 2 psychology degrees and 3 yoga teacher trainings already under her belt, she was diagnosed with cancer, and very early on, she intuitively knew it was an awakening of some kind, back to wholeness and embodying the soul codes of leadership held within. From nervous system regulation to trauma work, soul wealth, and abundance codes activations, shamanic work, Akashic records, and energy healing trainings, and devotion to the priestess path, Amanda uniquely blends a wealth of wisdom and high level of activation into her guidance. Guided by feathers and roses, her soul lead her to the priestess path that eventually, through a series of synchronicities, took her to sacred sites and planetary vortices around the globe, receiving soul code activations along the way, preparing her for this time of mass transition and planetary awakening and shift in consciousness. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Julia. Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure to be on. I am so excited to be here with you and to be part of your beautiful, beautiful podcast, your container that you've created. I really, really so appreciate it.
Yeah, the two of us, we met in Egypt, so that's also been part of the story of the journey that we could talk about. But I just love the way that you framed this title, and I want to ask you, how did you receive your soul's calling?
Oh my goodness, that is a big question that I'm going to have to really distill, I think. Wow, how did I receive my soul's calling? Well, intuition, the first thing that comes to mind of that, of how to answer that, honestly, it was during that diagnosis that I received 8 years ago. And it was almost exactly 8 years ago, actually. In April, I was diagnosed formally with lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And at some point in that diagnostic process, I just had this very clear knowing, intuition. This is my claircognizance, what I would now call it claircognizance kicking in. But I would now call it also like a download that it was not my time to die. It was my quarter life crisis, but it was, I was like, great, that puts me at 120, at least. But then that it was my job to heal the family pattern of dying from cancer. And at the time, I didn't,
Whoa.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
That is
So
huge.
it's yes. But I also, so some part of me was like, what? But some part of me also just accepted fully that that was truth with a capital T, that that was my mission, that was my job. And I knew that came from somewhere deep within slash also high above. And I wasn't super spiritual at the time, as my little bio indicated, but I also had many seeds planted until that point. I had traveled to India. I had traveled to kind of subconsciously, unconsciously, a number of sacred sites in my previous lifetime, as I call it. So I didn't know it at the time when I was going to all these places, but I was picking up soul codes and being activated on a
Yeah.
subtle level so that when that time came, I just knew. And my intuition had
Mm.
guided me to very big decisions that always panned out for me when I kind of thread it back and start to weave all the little seeds and things together. So what unfolded from there, I really wasn't prepared for also at the same time. I was like, oh, I'll be a health, mindset, and transformation coach to help people heal from cancer. But that obviously evolved into something much more comprehensive, I suppose you could say, and
Hmm.
expansive. So I didn't know I would be spiraled into this deep journey of spirituality and becoming a priestess, or activating the priestess codes that I already held within. I had no idea any of that was a thing at the time, but I can say probably that was the moment where I really started to pay attention, and I started praying and meditating daily, twice a day. And so that really opened me up to everything that then unfolded. I was like a yes girl from then on. When like things came into my field, I was like, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I love that. It's such a powerful, powerful story and journey. And I bet that also there weren't times that weren't always easy, but now looking back and being able to hold the frequency that you're holding and transmitting that. So it's really just such a pleasure and joy to have you share that.
Thank you.
So how did you then realize that travel was such an integral part of this soul code retrieval, as you name it?
Hey, everybody. If you are enjoying the show, then you would do me the biggest favor in clicking the subscribe button and engaging with my content so I can continue to deliver these beautiful conversations to you. Thank you so much.
Well, it was honestly in hindsight, after I had done some more traveling and had gone deeper on the path and started to learn these different aspects of grid work and soul codes. I didn't know what that was for a long time. And it was really only in hindsight that I was like, oh, actually, that whole time when I was traveling, when I was younger, I was activating something within. And, perhaps doing aspects of grid work, even though, because a lot of this work our soul can do unconsciously. Think about dream time. So our ego is unconscious to what our soul is doing. I should phrase it that way, probably. But so I guess it was probably somewhere in the 2020 to 2021 realm that I started to have this deeper understanding of what my journey has been about. And by then I had done my gene keys as well. And one of my keys is boundlessness. It's not my top one, but it is one of my core four. So that is really about, being lit up and fulfilled and feeling my most vital when I'm traveling and exploring and adventuring. And the duality there, I also want to presence, is that I love traveling within. I love exploring the inner
Hmm.
depths as well. So that adventure is really an adventure of learning about myself and learning about the universe held within, not just the
Yeah,
universe in the world
always.
without us. Yeah. So a lot of that deep inner exploration has been, through books and traveling in that kind of way. But yeah, a lot of it has actually been very external. I have traveled to 50 countries, 30 states, and many of them multiple times. I've lived in 6 countries. So I've been blessed in many ways to have those experiences, but it was a study abroad, grad school abroad. I randomly decided to teach English abroad in Japan when I was 22 years old. Like I quit my job after 2 months after college. I was like, this is so not fun or fulfilling. And I was job searching and it randomly came up, quote unquote random, right? I now know nothing is random, but I was just intuitively guided to say yes to that. I was like, I'm young. There's so many ways that we can justify it, quote unquote, logically. But it was just like this deep inner soul pull to do that. And then from there, I taught myself yoga through a little book in my tiny Japanese apartment. And then I decided to do yoga teacher training in India. And I wound up spending 6 months in India immersed in yoga and meditation and learning about Eastern traditions and that Eastern philosophy and wisdom and spirituality. So it was really fascinating. Like, I spent some time in the land of the Dalai Lama up north, and I did a 10-day silent meditation introduction to Buddhism retreat. This was after I did my Hatha yoga course, where we were immersed in it, learning yoga philosophy, doing karma yoga, doing all the pranayama and panchakarmas as well. So I was at the ashram, living an ashram life for a month at the age of 23. But then I kept getting sucked back into New York City and, matrix practicality, right? So,
Whoa.
yeah, I
The
went
dualities.
the duality was just like phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie, but and then I did grad school in London, and it was 2012 when I was sitting in London, and I had this random thought come into my mind as I was writing my papers. It was sometime in the spring of 2012, and I was just like, I know this is important, and I know it's real, and I know it's going to happen, but I don't know what it means exactly, but I know it's happening. It was the system, the shift, the awakening. It was just this phrase that dropped in out of nowhere. Mind you, this was still 4 years before my diagnosis, but I can look back and see that that was obviously a download of some kind coming through, because there was some deep part of me that knew it was something and it was coming. And then 2020 hit, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's what was coming through. Is I was kind of,
Yeah.
my soul was being prepared for this time. So all of these pieces I can, in hindsight, weave together and realize that my soul was guiding me to go to all these places, to study at this one program that existed in all the world. It was one school in London, and it was the only program I applied to, and I had an international transatlantic relationship riding on it. I put all of my eggs in one basket. It didn't make any logical sense, and yet it panned out. And it's a competitive field. Yeah, I was just like, in hindsight, I'm like, Amanda, that was really, really ballsy of you. But it worked, and my soul just knew that this was it. It had decided. Like, every bit of me knew. There were those like little niggles and doubts and fears that came up, but also there was this deep knowing that this was my path, and so trust it.
Yeah.
And those layers of trust, man, they keep going. But I'll pause them for
I
you.
love that. It's like the quantum manifestation of it's already done. So
Exactly. I was tapping into that before I knew what any of it meant. And yeah, so sometimes I have to remind myself. I've done this many times.
a lot of what you describe is kind of like retrospectively. Can you take us a little bit like into your experience, how you got to actually read the signs and the clues that you knew which ones to follow and also to discern like which wasn't meant for you?
Yeah. So this takes us to 2020 and the feathers and the roses. So at that point, like, I knew something was like, it was almost like I was resisting up until now, the spiritual knowings that were coming through on some subtle level. But then I fully embraced it. I knew something was totally off with what was going on globally. And I was just like, okay. And I was in Miami, so things were a lot more open there. And so I was like, okay, great. And so then, opportunities for me to leave my job came through, and I was able to focus more on what is it that I want to do. Because that whole time I was trying to build my coaching business, but my nervous system kept kind of, getting in the way there, honestly. I didn't have the capacity, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and I kept hitting walls. And it's been really hard. It's been a journey to figure out what has been blocking me from fully stepping into my truth. And I realized it's that persecution wound and the witch wound and the being demonized as a priestess, being taken down as a priestess, being sacrificed as a priestess many times. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until I got into this deeper spirituality that I was really able to find the answers. And of course, this is what my soul is here to do. So we teach what we need to learn, is how I feel. And so we have to go through the journey very deeply if we are called to be a teacher, a mentor, a guide. And there's just this deepening that has kept happening since the roses and the feathers came into my path. And it was a very interesting situation where I was on the beach meditating in September 2020, and I got back, I found this teaching, but it was after this guy had approached me on the beach, and I thought it was a little crazy. He was like, but also harmless. But I was like, this guy, I think he's homeless. But he had turmeric all over his face, and he was talking very intelligently and eloquently even about health and all of this stuff to help you thrive. And I was like, okay, I don't know exactly what's going on with him, but he's got something for me. He's got wisdom there.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened, I paid attention, but he was like, yeah, Jesus is the man, he's my best friend. And I was like, interesting, but I was like, no, he is the man, all right. We're connected to him. So I just had this like half of me that was wanting to run off the beach, and this half of me that was like, stay and listen. And so he's just kept talking about this and that. And he said to me at one point, do you have a boyfriend? And, why aren't you married? And so I was like, okay, I've got to back away from this. But he was like, you need to open your heart more. And it wasn't the way he said it, it felt like just this observation. And I was like, you're not wrong. I was like, yeah, you're right. You're right. And he then pointed to my teeth and he told me, you're a wolf, right? And he took my palm. And I was just like, what? He's like, yeah, you're a wolf. And I was like, what? And I still don't really know what that means entirely. But as I was walking off the beach, I found a feather and I picked it up. And he was like yelling after me, like, all these things. And I was like, okay, bye. But I know he was truly a messenger. And the fact that the feather, I found it as I was walking off the beach, kind of looking over my shoulder. He didn't follow me, but I found that feather and I picked it up and I I brought it home with me. And then I was folding laundry and I listened to this Alchemy of Ascension podcast that my friend has, and she had done a summit. And I was listening to her summit, and it was this like Star Wolf something, and like I don't even remember what the title was, but I was drawn to listen to that one first. Venus Rising is the name of the but at that time I wasn't really aware of Venus, and so I tuned in, and then they start talking about Anubis, the Egyptian god with the head of a wolf. Yes. And most people say he has the head of a jackal, but she was saying no, it's actually a wolf. And then I started paying very close attention. And then she starts talking about Anubis's role in the underworld. He's there to guide souls to the gates. And he weighs, and in her version, I know there's a couple different versions of the different mythologies, but in the version she shared, Anubis is the one who weighs the soul's heart against a feather. And my jaw dropped.
Maat's feather.
Yes, which I now know is Maat's feather. And my jaw dropped because I was just like, oh my God. And so then from then on, I listened to every single interview in that summit. I signed up for all the things. I got a channeling session. And what came through in that session was Inanna and the pink rose. And she was like, I don't know too much about this goddess. Actually, it was Ishtar, but I now kind of, they're the same. But my Nana's name is Nana. And so I kind of identified more closely with Inanna. So from then on, I was just like, okay, teach me everything I need to learn about the goddesses. I bought every book. And then the synchronicities just continued to flow. I started finding rose petals and roses on the ground. And then my roommate came home. She had worked an event. She's an aerialist, and she had worked a private event and brought home a centerpiece. And it was a bouquet of 100 pink roses. right after I had that channeling session. And I was like,
What a synchronicity.
oh my God. And so from there, I started calling in rainbows. I was like, I'm going to go to Tulum. I trusted that call. I went my first night there after a 2-week trip. My first night there, I'm like, I should just move to Tulum when my lease is up. And then Tulum opened up this huge vortex of healing. My Chiron line goes through Tulum. And what I learned that later on. I got an astrocartography reading, and I learned after I went to Switzerland, I looked back at my chart, and my Chiron wounded healer line also goes through Switzerland, which is why I kept being drawn back there. And so I'll get to that journey. But basically, all of these signs and synchronicities were coming to my field. And I would say, for me, very obvious ways. Maybe not everybody would feel like it was obvious to them at the time, but once those seeds are planted and they begin to awaken, you start to pay attention. I was seeing, and to be fair, I was looking back at my phone, like it was 2019, and I was seeing 1111 and screenshotting it. So I knew about these kind of synchronistic aspects and ideas and moments that, holding importance for us. There were parts of me, but it really wasn't until that moment that everything fully began to awaken and blossom. And I did an Embodied Ascension course, and I went to Tulum, and I got, my soul contract read, and all the pieces started to fit together. And then I found the Priestesses of the Rose program. And I just dove in head first. And that was with Achintya. And the Achintyas who guided both Julia and I to Egypt, Achintya and Sarah and ISLA. And so, but it was through Achintya and Goddess Rising that I found the Egypt retreat months later after we began the course. And in that time, I was just, Morocco came up. And it was for this kind of festival-like event. And I was like, that sounds fun. I've always wanted to go to Morocco. My friends were like, let's go. And I had not expected them to say, let's do it. Because go at this other event, and people were like, oh, we're going to Morocco in June, right? Or July, right after it opens up. You should come. It's going to be this magical experience. And I was like, that sounds amazing. And they were like, let's go. And I was like, really? So we went. We did. And apparently when I was there in the Sahara Desert, a portal to Egypt opened up. And so I got back and was feeling very ungrounded. I had done other traveling. I had gone to Switzerland for the first time that July. I went to Turkey, Cappadocia. I stopped in Barcelona. There was all these different layers to that journey, but I got back and was very ungrounded, but I also knew I was probably traveling to Delphi after my niece's birthday. I was probably traveling to Delphi, Greece in August. I had this capacity, this time that my soul was like, take this time to go on this journey. And I just didn't question it. I did, but I didn't. I was like, I just know that this time and these resources are meant for me to go deeper. I kind of look at it now as like a sabbatical of sorts, a PhD in life. Thing. There's
I love that.
multiple ways that I look at it. But then I got a reading, and I was told that a portal to ancient Egypt was opened up, where I was a priestess and sacrificed. And within 24 hours, there were 3 synchronicities with Egypt that came up. The Kybalion came up, and then it was Friday the 13th, and Achintya had I opened her email, and I never opened them, but it was Friday the 13th, and I was like, I want to know what she has to say about this, because I know it's a number of the sacred divine feminine. And so I went ahead and screenshotted it to share on my stories, and I wanted to make sure I got her correct handle. So I actually went onto her profile, and it was when I went onto her profile that I saw it was the last day to apply for the Egypt
to register for the trip. Wow.
So that was all within 24 hours or so. So obviously I had to apply. Obviously I did my little video and I applied, and the rest, I went to Athens, and the first thing I did was go on a walk just to explore the neighborhood. I kind of lived, I got a place kind of central. And the first thing I saw was a feather. when I got there. I had found feathers in Morocco, but it was like my first venture out of my hotel was I found a
Yeah,
feather
was a
immediately.
feather.
And then I went to Delphi, I went to Meteora, I went to all these places. And then when I didn't know where I was going next after Greece, I was like, let's see. Because part of me was, you know, initially I'd said, oh, maybe I should go to Egypt. But, oh, the other synchronicity was that I was like, I don't want to go to Egypt by myself. I would love to go with a group
Mm-hmm.
of people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like a group of women on some kind of sacred journey. It was kind of the thought I had. And then the next day I found Achintia's, I was just like blown away. And then I didn't know where to go next. And somebody was like, oh, come to Portugal. And I was like, okay. And there was a whole detour to Switzerland for the weekend. I got off on my layover. Talk about spontaneity. I asked if I could get my luggage on the layover in Geneva and go see my friend instead of going directly to Portugal. So I rebooked my trip to Portugal because I'd already booked the Airbnb. And as soon as I got to Portugal, I was like, okay, there was a little park outside of my Airbnb and there was a guy playing the violin or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's lovely. So I went outside to sit under a tree. And what did I find under a tree? A feather. And
A
then I
feather.
learned about the Knights Templar connection and the Holy Grail. And so that deepened me into the Holy Grail. I went on a whole adventure there to Tomar. And so I know that I've been talking a lot, kind of stream of consciousness about this journey, but I'm just trying to share like how these little signs and synchronicities were both signs to guide me, but also affirmations when I
Yeah.
arrived that
Yes.
I was on the right path.
It's a
So
greeting.
yeah, it's kind of this weaving of the trusting into your heart to trust that call, that when you actually answer the call, you will receive signs and guidance along the way, affirming that you're on the right path as well. So, and things will continue to open up and things will continue to come in my field and into your field as they did for me. So I guess that's the point that I want to share ultimately with all of that. And there's much more to the journey that I would like to talk about too with Switzerland, but that is how those signs, I began to trust them, and I really just started noticing them and allowed that knowing to come from within first, and allowing that confirmation, that affirmation from the external signs to kind of just come as I'm flowing through the process, going on the journey. So
Yeah.
yeah, does that make sense?
It does make complete sense. Absolutely. Yeah. And you maybe that also leads into what else you want to share, but I just want to say that that is something that you have shared with me offline, and I feel that it's coming full circle with the Anubis story that you shared in the beginning, because there was that Anubis statue that you came across while you were in Switzerland that is like
Yes.
totally like what would an Anubis statue do in the middle of Geneva?
Yes, yes. Well, it was actually in Nyon that I saw
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah.
statue.
Well, either way.
Yes, yes. Either way, right? So actually, can we just Switzerland obviously has come up a couple times in this journey already, but the synchronicities that really gelled for me when I was in Switzerland were just really beautiful and beyond. And you were a beautiful aspect of that journey, Julia. I really just want to presence that as our connection began before we actually formally met in Egypt, because we were, you know, we had a
That's true. Yeah.
yeah, had a couple calls, group calls to prepare us for the journey, and so there was this group chat, and I don't even know exactly what it was that opened up our personal conversation, but I might have mentioned that I was going to Switzerland or something, and you were in Switzerland. Maybe I reached out.
I'm sure that, yeah, there was a
Yeah.
mention, and that's where the connection started.
Yeah, so I didn't know why I kept getting drawn back to Switzerland, but I mean, it's a beautiful country. Obviously, I had been living in Miami and Tulum, so I was craving mountains. I love nature, but like part of me was like, oh, I just want to be in the mountains. That was like the draw at my conscious level. I didn't know that there was a lot of sacred energy in the mountains there. I didn't know that my Chiron wounded healer line actually ran through there as well. So for me, the two different locations, my Chiron wounded healer line goes through both Tulum and Switzerland. For me, that felt very much like the feminine and the masculine healing. And I think that there was
Okay.
both occurring in both places. But in hindsight, again, I kind of started to put those pieces together. But at the same time, who was it that came through when I went to the beautiful magical place that you recommended? You told me there was this gorgeous little Hermitage in the mountains of Switzerland. And I was like, where are they? Where is that? I want to go. And I made a point to go. And that was I was essentially on my own version of a pilgrimage, a self-guided, soul-guided pilgrimage. And when I was there, it was basically empty. It was a very tiny Hermitage on the cliff of a ravine. And I was just sitting there in contemplation and meditation. And all of a sudden, this energy comes through that I felt like wasn't my higher self. I felt like was a little bit different from me. And she called me my dove. And I was like, this Mother Mary, because of course I was surrounded by Mother Mary. And there was just all these beautiful, beautiful, loving motherly messages that were
Mm.
through. And I pulled out my phone to just, type down what she was sharing with me. And it was just a very, very warm, loving, heartfelt message, just encouraging me to trust, to continue to trust,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
continue to be on this path and this journey. And to, really, what it gave me permission to do was to strengthen my connection with the ascended masters as well. Because a lot of us don't feel worthy of connecting with them, I realize, because that is something
Mm-hmm.
I have dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that they're actually very available for us. And when we ascend into these higher dimensions, there is no hierarchy anyway. So we're not really meant to see them as above us. And so for a moment there, I questioned it very much, but I also was just like, okay, let's just see what she has to say. And then this woman, there was one other woman who was sitting in there praying fervently, more of a, that Catholic energy. But she, without a word, she came up to me and handed me this little plastic bag that had a medallion inside. And it was this Mother Mary medallion. These little,
Oh, yeah, we can see it
yeah.
for those watching. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody watching on YouTube or wherever this is videoed. But yeah, so this little medallion, she walked over and handed it to me. And I was like, and there was no other word said, and it was all in French, the message, but it was talking about healing and love and compassion and all of this beautiful energy. And I realized after the fact, I was like, oh my gosh, if that's not an affirmation that Mother Mary came to
Oh,
me.
so much, so much. I'm having goosebumps.
And I had
Yeah,
taken a
yeah.
video of the ravine, and there was these incredible light codes that came through, this very pure
Mm-hmm.
energy that came through the camera. And I was just like in awe. And then I will also share for anybody watching, this is a little, anybody not watching, a little diamond cross that my Nana had given to me.
Frost.
And I apologize, my fingernails are not perfect, but yeah, so it's a silver cross. And And I'm sharing this because at some point I got back to Tulum after we went to Egypt, all the things happened, but I had just set out a little altar of crystals, and I happened to place the medallion, the silver oval medallion, and the cross next to each other, or very close to each other. And then I just suddenly did this, where I put the cross on top of the oval in such a way that it looks like the arm.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my goodness, they cut off the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit. They cut off the feminine. And the circle at the top of the Ankh represents the Holy Spirit, and they masculinize the Holy Spirit, and they cut us off from our connection with the divine feminine on all levels, of course, from the mother.
Yeah.
So this was
What a
just,
revelation.
yeah, it was just a very profound moment, and also just another affirmation that continuing to trust my soul on this path, all will come together, all will coalesce, all will be reunited within me and integrated within me, all of the
Yeah.
multidimensional aspects that I've been picking up. And when I travel to all these places, sometimes I'm more conscious, and sometimes many times, because a lot of my travels happened earlier on, I didn't know what I was doing. I consciously went on pilgrimages at a certain point in my journey, but also not fully knowing half the time. When I was in Switzerland, I didn't know what was there for me. I didn't know why I was there. But then I
Yeah.
saw this statue of
Yeah.
Anubis, and there was the Roman energy there as well. And then I found out, even just last year, that the Lake Geneva, there was some distortion in the encoding of the water. And when I was there, I had thrown some, because CERN is right there as well, in Geneva, of course. And so there's a lot of distortion there's a lot of polarity, just like in Tulum, there's a lot of polarity in Switzerland, as you know. So um, I had tossed those little seeds in on my last journey to Switzerland. I tossed those seeds from my necklace that broke in Egypt, the little crystal seed beads that I had associated with these frequencies of the new earth: peace, love, joy, bliss, harmony, wholeness, abundance, and liberation,
Mm.
that came through in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. And I had associated them with the chakras. And I was like, oh, I don't know how this resonates. And it actually resonates so beautifully. But I threw some of those into the lake, and I just felt like, there was some kind of grid work I was doing with these crystals, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. I was planting these seeds of light and love into both the earth and the water, and really just putting intentionality into it as well. So that was another aspect that came through. And I did that right behind the castle where Anubis's statue lies. So yeah, so for me, I was learning about also the matrix distortions when I was going through
Yeah.
all of the journey with the lineages, the false king lineages and stuff like that. Um, and then eventually I wound up going to Avalon and the south of France on a proper Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. So all of the pieces began to come together as I was going through this longer extended journey of awakening my soul.
That is so incredible.
Yeah.
And, I've just like tracking in my mind, oh, okay, this is where she went. And then she went there. And so it's like this. I bet that you have a map somewhere and there's pins in all the countries and places where you were. So that
I
is
need.
really, go ahead.
Oh, I need to get one. I don't have one.
Yeah, you should. You should. And
Yeah.
also, I really love how you mirror that the outward exploration, how that is an inward journey on the same time, because that is exactly also coming back to the soul codes, um, why, or part of why we are supposed to be doing this, right? So
Exactly.
that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's kind of been a little bit of a, what is Amanda doing with her life right now kind of thing to a lot of people. But that's part of going on this journey of becoming, or embodying, I should say, embodying the priestess, the mystic, the spiritual mentor, teacher, guide, the healer, whatever, people who are listening, whatever they resonate with, right?
Yeah.
Is that we have to really lean into trusting our soul and our heart above all, and to let go of that matrix programming of what life should look like and what we should be doing.
Completely.
Because my journey has been entirely unconventional. But part of that is that unlearning, the deconditioning, and the reprogramming and the reclamation of who I really am at my core soul level. And that has awakened because I've gone on a lot of these journeys, because I've allowed myself to trust that. And then it engenders this deeper trust. Of course, I have had other situations that have really rattled my trust in self. And so we get to go deeper. There are aspects of that journey that, I won't share about on here, that actually there was some different things that were happening to, I don't want to get too much into it here, so how do I phrase this lightly? But that it was all for my highest good, but were really frustrating in the moment. And in the last however many months, like, it's been a revelation of what was also going on the flip side, through other people. But yeah, so it's really quite interesting. But at the same time, it has really helped me to deepen into myself and my knowing and my trust and my self-trust. And I think that is a huge thing that many of us are healing here, is that trust in self. Because in our past lifetimes, as priestesses, as priests, as mystics, way showers, whatever, we have been misguided, misused, persecuted on so many levels. And we have, at a deep core level, this is some of the timeline energy that I've been clearing from Atlantis in particular lately, is we have given our power away. And when we do that, we lose our trust in self.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
some cases, there's a lot of
100%.
so we, guilt for not seeing it and stuff like that. So we're healing a lot of these deep layers of inner trust above all. So when we can allow ourselves to tune in and follow that guidance and trust the call of our soul, and sometimes that external journey will help us to deepen that internal trust on a very deep, visceral level.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you phrase that. And that is, or when we travel, that is just such an ultimate accelerator for that trust and the knowing what we are capable to do because we are holding it already.
Yes, yes, exactly. I love that. Yes, we are holding it already. It's just the, like releasing the cloaks of the identities that are not ours, that are the matrix identities. And I was actually just going through a process this morning, because more layers came up, but, releasing the cloaks. And yeah, because sometimes it goes really deep. And this journey isn't easy because there's a lot going on out there that's trying to stop this from happening. So the more we can embody that truth, the more powerful we are. And that's really the journey that I feel is kind of the overarching theme for most of us incarnated right now, is really leaning into the heart and the soul and trusting that and embodying it and releasing the trauma from the nervous system and all of those layers is actually like the practical level that has to happen. So yeah, that's been a huge layer for me. The embodiment piece can only happen with a regulated nervous system. It's actually crucial, essential to activate those higher frequencies. The first time I was activated very highly in a container was 2019. I was activated with all these beautiful codes and frequencies, but I literally had a meltdown. Like my nervous system could not handle it. And I didn't
Yeah.
know that at the time. I thought I was like, there was something deeply wrong with me. And then I figured out that, oh, the frequencies were just not a match for what my body was able to hold at the time. There was
Yeah.
no integration.
Yeah.
So the integration point is very important as well. Yeah, so it's been a journey, and that's why going to some of these sacred sites can be a little bit you can feel it in your body, and it can be a little bit destabilizing almost at a point. Sometimes it's very expansive, but it can also work in the other way, because we're retrieving these soul codes that we, are very high frequency energies, and if in one way to look at it. So integration is really so important.
Integration is key, definitely. And most of the experiences are also very intensely on a physical level, right? And so that's why it's important to not just go there, or even from a mind's perspective, go and like expose yourself to these energies and frequencies, but also to be able to sustain them in your body, because that's what we want to hold ultimately, and like bring them back into our reality, whatever the reality is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Holding it. Yeah. And that's actually, it just reminded me of like manifestation. It's like you can manifest the thing, but can you hold it? Can you hold the frequency of having it?
Yeah.
Can you hold the frequency of keeping
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
it's
what's next for you?
excellent question. I have been in a period of relative stasis compared to all of that traveling, because I have had to integrate. I mean, I went to Sedona, and I came down to Florida to finish clearing Atlantean timelines was the message that I got in January, December, somewhere around there. And then I opened a notebook that I had written that in December 2020. I will come back to Miami to clear Atlantean timelines. And then I met with a healer a few weeks ago, and to release this karmic entanglement that was so deep. And she said, without me saying any of that to her, she said to me, babe, I feel like we're here together. Like, I feel like you found me so that we could clear Atlantean timelines, because that's what I've been working on. And then same thing happened in the workshop that was supposed to be with like dozens of people. 4 people were able to get on the call, and it was another Atlantean timeline clearing 2 days after our session, and it was with mermaids. So I don't know if anybody resonates with that, but there's this very powerful clearing energy that's been happening, but the completion time came with this eclipse, I feel, for a lot of those old timelines.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been hard work, but so I am trusting that the next step of the journey will be revealed. But yeah, I've been building my school in the meantime, my online school, and hosting the courses and the activations and everything. So yeah, that's the foundation for that is solid, it's built. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Hard work, but so worth it. And thank you so much for doing this work. It's so, incredibly, incredibly healing and activating and beautiful. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I would love to have been this like more of a conversation, but at the same time, there is a lot to be said about this.
It was a conversation completely. So
okay, yes. I was just like, I'm talking a lot, I know, but there's like a lot of story here that I feel like, this was one of those journeys that it's through the story that you get to see how the pieces weave together.
absolutely.
So that's why I felt called to share it on this particular platform that you've created, which is so beautiful and magical. So I really am so grateful that you brought me on here.
I love it. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, because also I mean, I knew bits and pieces, but even for me, it feels like now I have the full circle big picture. So thank you so much. And I feel that there's really a lot in there from your journey that people can take, whether it's about the keys and codes, or just to understand how these soul code activations work on a subtle and sometimes also on a very explicit level.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's been so much fun.
Any
Mm.
any final wisdom that you want to share?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've said the word trust a lot. The other word that I feel like just wants complete surrender. The more you can surrender to the journey, if anybody's familiar with Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment, by the way, it's 11:11 here. Um,
Thank you.
the more you can just surrender your ego to the soul and allow your soul to lead you, that will build the trust, and the trust will help you to surrender even more deeply. So it's an iterative process. It's a spiral journey, as we talk about on the Priestess path. It spirals you deeper and deeper, but every time you go a layer deeper, you rise up ever higher on that upward spiral journey. Frequency wise, vision wise, limitless possibilities kind of energy comes through. And it's also this very practical embodiment of who you are here to be. So if you can just trust and deeply surrender to the path that you're being guided on, all will be revealed and all will be embodied by you the more that you trust and surrender. And you will embody your deepest truth, and the path that you are here to be on, to be a way shower, it will continue to be revealed and it will continue to unfold as you continue to travel on the path. And the vision will expand and the vision will grow, and it will just continue to be illuminated and anchored in at the same time ever more deeply, because this is the journey of anchoring in. It's not just going up and out, it's about anchoring in very deeply so that we can activate the grids of Gaia and then create a really solid energetic foundation and blueprint for the golden age of miracles, heaven on earth. We are the Anna grandmother of Jesus card comes through. Work Your Light deck, if anybody's familiar with that. But Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, I highly recommend that channeled work as well. It's a book, I can't remember who.
It's phenomenal.
Yes. I keep coming back to that because everybody incarnated on earth now, but especially the way showers right now, what we are doing is anchoring in the blueprint. What is going to come will take centuries to build. And we have to remember that it starts with us right now. And Anna was the one who, according to this channeled work, she had a 900-year-long lifetime, to be fair. But because she had activated that immortality code, that immortality key. Well, not totally immortal, but that longevity is very, very much within our DNA. We have been kind of shut down. So she brought through all of the disciples through her womb. She knew what she was doing. She brought through Mother Mary. She brought through Mary Magdalene's, one of her parents, I believe, because they were cousins, Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, and they all knew that they were there on a mission. They didn't know necessarily what the full extent of the mission was. In some cases they did. Mother Mary, they knew very clearly what her mission was. From the age of 4, she was in her mystery schools, right? And I just, we don't really know very much about Anna, grandmother of Jesus. And so we have to remember that all of these beautiful guides that are here with us came through the womb of the mother, and that we are here birthing this collectively into Gaia. We are anchoring it into Gaia right now. And that's why these soul journeys are so important, because we do pick up these codes and we do pick up these remembrances of what the higher truth is, of our purpose on this planet right now. So that's what I would like to lead it with, is to just, trust the vision that you have, but also know that whatever you get to accomplish in this lifetime is perfect, and to just one step at a time, one step at a time.
One step at a time. That, so much. I can relate to that so much. And that is also where the trust comes in and the overwhelm fades with the one step at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you for coming here.
Oh my gosh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you everybody who tuned in and who stayed with us this long. Such a fun conversation. But I love to talk about these aspects of the journey because a lot of people, just aren't aware of what's possible.
So much. Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.